Hello, and welcome to the CXW official documentary. In this video, we're going to be going over the last 4 months of this channel. The only 4 months of this channel, really. So grab a seat, get something to eat, and enjoy this documentary. Now, what exactly is CXW? Now, that's a great question. CXW is basically some sort of WWE type wrestling promotion me and my friends crafted a few months ago. Now, there's 2 separate stories to this, where the name comes from and why we started this. We're going to start with why we started this. Now, why we started this is an interesting story, because we have to go back to the beginning of June, before the channel even started, really. I was sitting in a Walmart parking lot, you can't make this up, Walmart parking lot, thinking to myself, what would it be like if I wrestled an invisible person? Because I watched that Invisible Man vs. Invisible Stan match that most of you probably have seen. It's pretty funny. And then I brought it up to Colin. He'll be joining us soon, but he was like, oh my god, Drake, you should record that. And then the videos got too big to send, so we just started posting them on YouTube. And yeah, that's the story. And now to talk about where the name comes from, I'm bringing on my man, Colin.
Yeah, why it's called CXW is a funny story. I was playing with my action figure. Yeah, I have wrestling action figures. I think everyone does at this point. But I was playing with my action figures, and I was watching all these YouTubers, WSC, GCW. I wanted a name for myself, and this may sound really fucking cringy, but I settled with the name CWE, which stands for Colin Wrestling Entertainment. But I just didn't like it. And so when we started CXW, I didn't want to use the CW name because I just thought, but I didn't know what to use. And then I saw Extreme everywhere, Extreme Wrestling, and I'm like, that's perfect. Colin's Extreme Wrestling. Perfect.
A few things to note before I move on in this documentary. Don't take this too seriously. It's a joke. Don't take it seriously at all. It's supposed to be funny, lighthearted. So please, don't take it seriously. And for some clarity, me, the one voicing most of it, it's that short guy right there on the ground. Colin, the guy who just came in, is the tall guy who's definitely not the one under the mask. And Jonah, he's going to be around here sometime. He's not going to do any commentary, but he's that other guy you'll see. When we started, it was shit. It was not to be desired, I'll say that. The wrestling just wasn't up to par at all, and the beginnings, they just weren't that great. To be able to improve and get better, you have to have these crappy, bad moments. Look at that, I have an iPad with a WWE title on it. That's ridiculous. Enough with me bad talking this company here. Let's go into what the beginnings were like in terms of actual storytelling and whatnot. The universe started with Drake as champion, and he would later get challenged to the Elimination Chamber for the WWE title by none other than Colin. The promos at this time consisted of the same shit. Colin would come out, say Drake's a bad champion, or say he's faced no one, and then Drake would come out saying, oh, are you champion? And then brag about it for the next 3 minutes or so. In regards to being champion, Drake only had, 2 championship matches. One was one of the worst matches known to man as the street fight, and the other was a 6-minute squash match, where half the match was just a promo against the Invisible Fan. Back to Elimination Chamber, but Colin's final promo before Elimination Chamber, he would set out and say that if he didn't win the title at Elimination Chamber, he'd leave the company. Now, as for Elimination Chamber, there were 6 members of the Elimination Chamber, like a real Elimination Chamber, which consisted of the WWE Champion Drake, Colin, Jonah, Invisible Man, Invisible Stan, and a wrestler who's only made 1 appearance, which was that match, Stuffed Cody Rhodes. The first one eliminated from the Elimination Chamber would be Invisible Man, followed by a horrendous entry by Jonah lasting only a few seconds, and then Stuffed Cody Rhodes would be eliminated by a powerbomb, Invisible Stan would be eliminated, who was in a faction with Drake at the time. And then your winner of the Elimination Chamber, a new WWE Champion, Colin. I believe stuff got better at this point, so let's move on to where we are now. Over the last few months, I definitely believe we have gotten better at this. So for this section, I'll be talking about where CXW is now in regards to all the champions and whatnot at the end of September. Shockingly, the IC title has had a much crazier history and reign than the WWE title, so we'll start by talking about that one first. The first match ever in this company's history was Drake vs. Invisible Man for the IC title, which would be won by the Invisible Man. And in his only second match defending it in a title-for-title match against Colin, he would end up losing it, which meant Colin was undisputed champion. But soon after that match, Jonah would challenge Colin in the IC title, and he would end up winning it on just a normal episode. Now, Jonah would go in Night of Champions as the IC champion, and he would face off against Invisible Man, and he would end up retaining the title. Now, he wouldn't be so lucky against Silent Steve at WrestleMania, because Silent Steve would win, and that's where the title is today. And now the main title, the WWE title. As I mentioned earlier, at Elimination Chamber, Drake would lose the title to Colin. And ever since then, Colin has not given it up, facing many, many opponents. The catalog of opponents he's faced is just about legendary. Let's go through just about all of them. In his record-breaking reign, he would face Jonah and Drake in a triple threat match, the Invisible Man in that title-for-title match, Jonah in a 2 out of 3 falls match, Invisible Dan in the Basement Brawl match, the first one, Mr. America in the America Rules match, Drake at Night of Champions, Stan at the WrestleMania is Coming video, Invisible Can at WrestleMania in the Falls Count Anywhere match, and finally, Invisible Can no DQ match as our final match to end that rivalry. So there you have it. I think we've definitely improved since the olden days, and you might have noticed, hey, there's a lot of new characters in there. So, let's talk about them. Characters. They really make the show good or bad. When you have a good character who's good at expressing what they talk about, it really makes it enjoyable. But when you have a bad character, they kind of just bore you and want you to just turn the TV set off. Let's talk about Colin first. Where do I even start on this guy? The best character in CXW. CXW gets its name from Colin. No shit. And also current WWE champion. There's really no stopping him. For about the last 3 or so months, he's been absolutely dominant, eating 1 or 2 pins in the last 3 months. When you wrestle like 20 times and only eat 2 pins, that's actually insane. So if someone ever asks you, oh, who's the face of CXW, you should already know. He went from the top face challenging for the title, and then when he won the title, he went full heel because nothing else mattered to him. And then, at Night of Champions, he'd go back to turning face after Drake would be attacked by his own posse. That was really just scratching the surface on this complex-ass character. Drake. What is there to say about him? After he lost the title, let's be honest, he's kind of fell off, but he does have that championship opportunity at Money in the Bank. But let's be honest, no one thinks of him as the face. He's kind of number 2 in the company as also being shit, because his promos are kind of just the same thing over and over. Everything he does is kind of just the same. And so, he's definitely not the best in the ring or during promos, but he's kind of just here to even the roster. Jonah, the former IC champion who actually won that title in his first single match, which is pretty cool, but he lost it to Silent Steve, as aforementioned, and who will be facing Drake at Money in the Bank to see if he will get another shot. Mr. America, the first non-Drake Colin or Jonah character to debut in CXW. He came out, said he wanted to challenge someone in an American match, and to everyone's surprise, the WWE champion, Colin, would accept that challenge, so he would face off against Colin, but would lose that opportunity. Silent Steve, your current IC champion. Now he is a wrestler. The only time he was ever pinned was actually against Mr. America in a basement brawl match. So he's definitely proved himself in this company to be a worthy IC title champion. Basement brawls in general are always a fun time. They definitely put the X in CXW. That would not be Mr. America's toughest challenge at Night of Champions, but we'll get back to him later. Now these first 5 wrestlers I refer to as Phase 1 of this company. Now let's move on to the next wrestlers in what I call, obviously, Phase numero 2. This is the Jock, a very sporty asshole kind of character who is pretty much a roughhouse. But that is Rich Guy, a piece of shit who is rich because he has a lot of money, so... Both characters clash at WrestleMania in both of their wrestling debuts, and the Jock would end up picking up the win there. Jingle Balls. Now, Jingle Balls is a carbon copy of another character we'll get to later, but basically, he's a clown, asshole, dumbass, who has no idea what he's doing, comes around the chainsaw and shit.
Next, we have to talk about the CXW hacker. Drake knew what he was doing, putting me on this one. Anyway, the CXW hacker rudely interrupted me during one of my promos, saying that he was going to take over CXW or whatever. And I don't know. He kept interrupting my promos. I got tired of it. I gave him this ultimatum, and he hasn't come through with it yet. I mean, it looks like he's in the Money in the Bank match. I have no idea. I'm staying clear of him. He kidnapped the Jock. I don't know why he's still in here. I can't do anything about it. No one can do anything about it. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. But he can hack anything. We haven't seen him in the ring yet. He can hack anything. He's always hacking in my promos apparently. But yeah, that's basically all we have at the CXW hacker as of right this moment.
The only wrestler to actually leave CXW, Mr. Not America. Now he was the character. People miss him. People cried when we had to release him. But things gotta happen. So he was let go after the loser leaves CXW match. He wanted to leave on his own terms. He was like, oh, if I lose this match, I'm leaving. And that's what would end up happening. On his own terms against Mr. America. And it was a pretty sad day for CXW fans everywhere. We all miss you, Mr. Not America. If you remember earlier when I mentioned how this company was formed, you'd know that this company is basically built on invisible characters. Also, I mentioned earlier that the first ever CXW match would be won by an invisible person. CXW wouldn't be where it is today without the invisible people. Invisible Man was IC champion at one point, so now I'm going to go through all the invisible characters and their impacts. Here in CXW, we have 5 invisible wrestlers, and those consist of Invisible Man, Invisible Dan, Invisible Stan, Invisible Fan, and Invisible Can. Some of their best moments include the IC title win, obviously, the faction of 2/3 Invisible, the terrible street fight match, the time Invisible Fan got squashed, 2/3 Invisible turning on Drake, and the time Colin squashed Invisible Can in about 5 freaking seconds. Now, of course, there's many other memorable moments with the invisible people, but I just thought those were the right ones to mention here. Let's go a bit more in depth on these moments. Basically, since the beginning of this company, Drake has formed 2/3 Invisible, which he became leader of after a leader match. But then, after the terrible adventure of him losing again at Night of Champions, they would turn on him. And they've hated each other ever since, even having a triple threat match at WrestleMania, which Drake would win. Now let's bring up the street fight. Drake used that Kenny stick way too much in that match, which made it so boring, and it was just so bad. No good moves were executed. It's just not to be remembered. And of course, the time that Invisible Can got embarrassed, He got embarrassed in the street fight and got embarrassed in the squash match, which was literally Colin saying, "Invisible can, this is going to be fun." Super kick, spear, 1, 2, 3. Now don't get me wrong, the invisible people are very pivotal. Many matches wouldn't have been able to have been done without the invisible people. Think about it. The Tombstone Power Driver. I'm not getting a Tombstone Power Driver off a fucking set of stairs. So even if the invisible characters were parts of some of CXW's lowest moments, we still appreciate them for coming into work every single day to work with our buffoon asses. Rivalries. They're the main reason most matches would happen. Colin and Jonah's rivalry that had back-to-back championship matches. The time 2/3 Invisible would turn on Drake, and everyone hated each other there. Literally everyone did. The time Invisible Can got greedy and took advantage of Colin's injured foot to set up a rivalry match against them at WrestleMania. Drake and Colin's historic rivalry of bad blood for the WWE Championship. But let's be honest, there will never ever be another rivalry like this one was. Pure fucking hatred on both sides. After Mr. America would lose the America Rules match, out would come a new character, Mr. Not America. That guy attacking the women. But shit would get insane. Every time one of them had a match or promo, the other would come out and attack them. It was absolutely crazy. And all of this would lead up to WrestleMania, where they would have a loser leaves CXW match. To talk some more about this rivalry, I've once again brought on my man, Carl.
Mr. America and Mr. Not America. Holy shit. I don't even know what to say about this rivalry. This one was weird. I was defending my title against Mr. America, and I defeated him in the Mr. America Rules match. And this motherfucker comes out, no shirt on. I don't know, fucking yelling on the top of his lungs about Russia and communism. I don't even know. But they ended up going he ended up appearing in the basement brawl match between him and Mr. America and Silent Steve, I guess. I wasn't really paying too much attention because that shit was weird as hell. And then their WrestleMania match was Communist Rules basement brawl. I can't believe we showed that on national television. I almost pulled that, but let's just say that was a fucking weird rivalry. And Mr. Not America, unfortunately, is no longer in the company because he lost the match. But yeah, that was a weird one.
Choreography, or otherwise known as the moves the wrestlers actually do in the ring. There's been many famous moves in the history of CXW, but some of the most famous are, of course, Colin's finisher known as the Spear. He also used to do the super kick way more often, but I don't really know what happened to it. Colin definitely has a great catalog of moves. Drake's electric chair powerbomb, which for some reason he only does on the invisible people. Drake might also sometimes hit a variety of chops, punches, and more physical moves, while he also does the occasional ankle lock, which is definitely a crazy move to hit. But Drake's most iconic move is, of course, the splash. You know that match is over when that fat tub of shit hits a splash on you. Next up is Jonah, and his most famous move is probably his cock chop. Although Jonah does hit a lot of kicks and the very occasional Cody cutter. The way someone might move about the ring is definitely a sign of what their character might be like. You could be a high flyer, more fast-paced, physical, or you could be slow and have more power with some technical moves set in there. The moves that are performed in the ring are definitely what bring the views in and the most important part of CXW. Storytelling might be a great catalyst, but what I like to say is bad moves mean bad views. Now let's talk about this cool-ass Silent Steve finisher chokeslam. I mean, if you get hit with that shit, chances are your ass is not kicking out. It's no wonder Silent Steve is so good at wrestling. He probably has one of the best movesets in the entire company. But be on the lookout, because at Money in the Bank, Silent Steve may have debuted a new finisher, and holy shit, is that shit deadly. Just wait till you guys see it. You're gonna be like, oh my goodness. For the next section, let's pass it back to Colin.
Entrances. They can really make or break the excitement of a match. I mean, you have to agree. First, we have my Night of Champions entrance, and that shit was badass. That's all I have to say. And secondly, can we talk about how cool Silent Steve's entrance was at WrestleMania? New attire, and he finally debuted a new theme song. Well, his only theme song. His first theme song was Synthwave. Kind of fucking weird, but hey, pretty cool. Next, we have Jonah's entrance, which is Don't Mind My Night, which is a banger song back from God knows when. But he likes to take his shirt off. That's fucking weird, but yeah. Okay, but the main part of entrances is how they add to CXW. I mean, the songs really add to a character. I mean, if they just come out and there's nothing there, I mean, we do that sometimes, but that's mostly for promos. But if they come out to a match with no music, it kind of like is boring. I guess Silent Steve did do that, but that's different for his character. But it kind of adds to the story and the build of a character. It kind of just adds more to the character itself. Hey, look, it's your boy when he was Undisputed Champion. Now let's talk about the most boring character in CXW, Drake, with all hail the chief. You know, he may be an okay wrestler, but, you know, I do like his theme. It kind of fits his character, and it's probably the better ones in CXW. So that's really all I have to say about it. I'm gonna be honest, Colin, aka my theme song, is kind of generic. There's nothing I really do. I had to look up copyright-free music, and that's the coolest one I could find. If you go back to older videos, I did use different music. I didn't want to get copyrighted, so that's why I stopped using it. I used JD McDonough once. I'm getting off track here. But this is really all I have to talk about for entrances. So I'm going to leave it to Drake for the next section.
Gotta love pay-per-views. This is what separates a normal episode from an actual good match. In CXW so far, we've had a total of 3 pay-per-views. Night of Champions, WrestleMania, and the upcoming pay-per-view, Money in the Bank. Let's start with Night of Champions. This would be the first ever pay-per-view in CXW, not counting Elimination Chamber, because that wasn't really a pay-per-view. For this section, we'll be going through every pay-per-view and all the matches to that pay-per-view. So let's see how we did at Night of Champions. Of course, the first match in CXW's pay-per-view history would be a Mr. Not America match. Mr. Not America would face Invisible Fan, and Mr. Not America would pick up the W. The second match of Night of Champions would be Jonah vs. Invisible Man for the IC Championship. This would be the first title match of pay-per-view history and would see Jonah picking up the W there to retain the IC title. Night of Champions so far has not had that much firepower, but in match number 3, we'd see Mr. America face off against Silent Steve in the second ever basement brawl. During the match, Silent Steve would try to leave the ring, but would be halted by Mr. Non-America by sending him down the flight of steps, which means Mr. America would pick up the W, but Mr. America would be attacked by Mr. Non-America, and that would set up their match at WrestleMania. And now the final match. Our main event, Colin vs. Drake in the title rematch. This match would be the first ever CXW match to go over 20 minutes and would see Colin retaining the title. But that wasn't the only story, as 2/3 Invisible would turn on Drake after the match, setting up their triple threat match at WrestleMania. And now, to talk about that pay-per-view. WrestleMania, CXW goes big, and this pay-per-view we'd see 5 matches, an increase from 4 from Night of Champions, but this would definitely be a pay-per-view to remember. Let's see who would come out on top. In the opening match, we would see Silent Steve vs. Jonah for the IC title. After a hard-fought match, we would see a new IC champion, as Silent Steve would beat Jonah. I would say this was a pretty good opener for WrestleMania. Match number 2 would be the Drake Posse Civil War. After turning on Drake at Night of Champions, things were unclear for Drake and his posse. But after a signed contract for WrestleMania, this match would go into effect, and we would see Drake come out on top. The third match would be the Jock versus Rich Guy, 2 different debuts. After the Jock would injure Invisible Man's calf, Invisible Man would need to find a replacement for him at WrestleMania. In another tough-fought match, we would see the Jock picking up the W in his debut. Halfway through the pay-per-view, I think we're doing pretty good. Match number 4, oh my goodness, Mr. America vs. Mr. Non-America in Basement Brawl 3, loser leaves, CXW. After a metal pipe would fall and deafen Mr. Non-America, Mr. America would be able to pick up the win, meaning Mr. Non-America had to leave the company. This is the rivalry match of the year, most likely. What a match this was. Absolute craziness. The match was communist rules and would still see Mr. America pick up the W in Basement Brawl number 3. What a match this was. And our main event, Colin vs. Invisible Can, after an intense, heated turn from Invisible Can. After being promised a title match, Invisible Can would attempt to injure Colin's foot to get an advantage at their title match. These cheeky tactics would not work, however, as Colin would still win and retain his title. And for CXW's biggest pay-per-view ever, that's how it was wrapped up. And I believe CXW did really good with WrestleMania. And now the pay-per-view that's just about to happen, Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank is going to start with a match between Drake and Jonah for an IC title shot against Silent Steve. This is because in Silent Steve's conquest, Drake had to translate what Silent Steve was saying, which was that they wanted them to have a match to see who would face him at Money in the Bank. Now, let's talk about the qualification matches. Originally, Drake and Stan were facing off to see who would get one of the final spots in the triple threat ladder match, but would be interrupted by Jingle Balls taping them down to the ground, which would lead to a countout, and Jingle Balls being the first one in to that Money in the Bank ladder match. Many believe that only because it was a no DQ random triple threat match that Jingle Balls was allowed to win. The second qualifying match would be the Jock versus Invisible Man. This is kind of a rematch because they never had their match at WrestleMania. We would see the Jock win that match and secure himself a place into that triple threat ladder match. Right? And of course, this match would be interrupted by this guy claiming that he hacked the Jock out of the match and was hacking himself into the match, which meant the second person in the match was not the Jock, but would actually be the CXW hacker. Now, the final spot was unclear until Rich Guy would come out and claim that he bought himself a way into that final spot for the ladder match, setting up Jingle Balls versus CXW Hacker versus Rich Guy in the ladder match. And as for the main event, Colin will hold an open promo challenge to see who would face him for the WWE Championship. To a lot of people's surprise, Colin would pick Mr. America after a 45-second promo when he had many others to choose from, like the Jock, the CXW Hacker, Silent Steve, all those good people. But really, no one else really liked those two, so Mr. America was kind of his best bet. Of course, the ring. It's where the matches happen. You can't wrestle without a ring. You're not just going to wrestle in the middle of nowhere. Now here in CXW, you have 3 rings and kind of a bonus ring. This is the main ring, or what I like to call Ring C. A lot of great moments have happened here with a lot of great areas like the door for entrances and that chair right there which provided so many spots. It's just a great ring, but now let's talk about the next ring. This is Ring D, where Drake does most of his wrestling against invisible people. It's kind of like the secondary ring with that little stair set in the back that we only used recently, but also those two couches there definitely provide a lot of help. And now for the third ring. This is Ring J, which is kind of similar to Ring D with those 2 couches and stair set, but there's a more established entrance ramp and fluffier couches. So that's what makes up ring J. And now for a little bonus final ring, of course, we have the basement. I mean, there's so many great moments here. This is where the basement brawls happen. It gets so physical down there, like going through that stair set, falling down the stair set, going into the wall, grabbing all the weapons. Definitely one of the most extreme rings in CXW. Basement Brawl 1, 2, and 3 are definitely considered some of the best matches in CXW history, and the basement is definitely a big version of that. There's also this time where Colin put a camera on the other side of ring C because some maintenance work was being done, and this is what the other side of that ring looks like. So maybe one day we could have a match where the camera's facing this way. Probably not, but hey, look at that. Oh my god, you actually watched this video all the way through. I cannot thank you guys enough for all the support we get on these videos. And if you're still here, I thank you so much, because this took so long to make, and I really appreciate every single viewer that we get here in CXW. And now here's a little thank you message from Chairman Colin.
As one of the creators of CXW, I want to thank you for watching us for these past 4 months and supporting the channel as it grows from 0 to 10 to 30 to 50 subscribers, and I hope we continue to grow. And again, I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little documentary.
Even if you watch one video, all the videos, been a fan for 1 second or since the beginning, we all appreciate you here at CXW. We couldn't have done it without you guys. We really appreciate you. Thank you guys so much. Remember, we're only 4 months in, so for the next 4, 8, 12 months, longer and longer, we'll be making more videos, more pay-per-views, more promos, more video packages, more kickoff shows. Everything you like, we make. And we can't thank you guys enough. This has been crazy ride, so thank you all for watching.